He thought fear was respect. That silence meant obedience. That power made him untouchable. Until one waitress met his gaze, refused to tremble, and showed him the difference between control and humanity. You're about to hear a story that will stay with you long after it ends. Stay glued, click like, and hit that subscribe button. The billionaire arrived in silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind that followed him like a warning. Doors opened before he reached them. Conversations lowered. Phones disappeared into pockets. In the mirrored elevator of the Argent Spire Hotel, his reflection stared back with surgical precision. Black tailored suit, expression carved from restraint, eyes trained never to soften. Alexander Voss had built an empire by never needing anyone, and by reminding everyone else how easily they could be replaced. At 42, he controlled a multinational conglomerate, 3 cities worth of real estate, and the fates of thousands of employees. What he did not control, what gnawed at him in the moments between meetings, was the hollow quiet that waited when the day ended. The kind of quiet that reminded him how often power came at the cost of connection. He stepped into Alabaster Row, the hotel's crown jewel restaurant. Crystal chandeliers glimmered like frozen stars. Ivory columns rose with deliberate grandeur. Everything about the place promised perfection. Imported marble floors, gold-rimmed tables, a piano that played itself in subdued elegance. Perfection was expected. And expected things were always disappointing. Alexander took his seat without greeting the host. His presence alone was enough. The maitre d' nodded too quickly. Somewhere in the kitchen, tension spiked. Word spread the way it always did. "He's here." Waitresses stiffened. One checked her apron twice. Another quietly asked to switch sections. They all knew the stories. Plates sent back untouched, staff reduced to silence with a glance, complaints delivered with clinical detachment that left no room for defense. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. His disappointment cut deeper than anger ever could. Across the city, long before the sun rose high enough to touch the restaurant's windows, Maya was already on her feet. Her alarm rang at 4:30 a.m. as it always did. She silenced it before it could wake her roommate, rolled out of bed, and stretched muscles that never fully recovered from the day before. The mirror reflected a woman who looked ordinary by design. Hair pulled back neatly, minimal makeup, posture trained into quiet efficiency. Invisible if she did it right. She dressed quickly, tugging on her uniform, slipping her worn notebook into her bag. Inside were fragments of a life nobody at Alabaster Row ever asked about. Half-finished essays, translated passages from novels in 3 languages, notes from business lectures she listened to online during her commute. Once she had dreamed of boardrooms and strategies. Now she memorized table numbers and wine pairings. Life had taught her a simple rule. Dignity survived best when expectations stayed low. At the restaurant, Maya moved with practiced grace. She greeted coworkers softly, accepted extra shifts without complaint, and absorbed tension without letting it touch her face. Managers liked her because she never caused trouble. Customers liked her because she listened. What they didn't see was the constant calculation behind her eyes, the awareness of power, of how easily one wrong word could cost rent, safety, stability. By late morning, the restaurant hummed with its usual rhythm. Then the air changed. The maitre d' straightened. The manager adjusted his tie. Plates paused mid-journey. "He's here," someone whispered. Maya felt it before she saw him. The collective intake of breath. The shift in gravity. Alexander Voss sat alone at the center table. He didn't look angry. That was the problem. He examined the room the way one might inspect a machine, searching for inefficiencies. His gaze flicked toward a server carrying water. She faltered, barely perceptible. His eyebrow lifted a fraction. The manager leaned toward Maya. Your next rotation, he said, voice tight. But, he hesitated. If anything goes wrong, let me know immediately. Maya nodded. She had learned long ago that fear multiplied when shared. Better to carry it quietly. She approached the table with steady steps. Good morning, she said. May I take your order? Alexander looked up slowly. Something in her tone made him pause. Not warmth, not submission, but clarity. She wasn't trying to please him. She was present. I already know what I want, he replied. I want competence. Around them the room seemed to shrink. Maya met his gaze, not challengingly, not timidly. Simply meeting it. You'll have that, she said. And if there's something specific you need, you can tell me. The slightest hesitation flickered across his face. It vanished just as quickly. Still water. Medium rare steak. No substitutions. No delays. Understood, she replied, jotting it down. As she turned away, she felt it, the pull. Not attraction. Recognition. Two people standing on opposite sides of a structure built on hierarchy and silence. Alexander watched her leave, unsettled by a sensation he hadn't felt in years. Resistance. Not loud. Not defiant. But real. He told himself it was nothing. Another server. Another meal. Another reminder that people existed to fulfill functions. And yet, as the minutes passed, he found himself watching the space she had occupied. Across the room, Maya exhaled slowly. Her hands trembled just enough to notice. She didn't know why that table felt different. Only that something had shifted the moment their eyes met. Neither of them understood it yet, but their worlds had already begun to collide. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're ready for this emotional journey. The first plate came back untouched. It returned to the kitchen with a quiet clink, the kind that carried accusation without noise. The server who brought it back didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes were glassy, jaw tight, shoulders rigid, as if bracing for an impact that had already landed. Too dry, she murmured. The chef swore under his breath. The manager wiped his palms on his trousers. Every second Alexander Voss sat unsatisfied felt like a countdown toward disaster. A second waitress tried. Then a third. Each one left the table diminished, voices softer, steps quicker, confidence stripped away layer by layer. Alexander never raised his voice. He simply corrected. Returned plates. Pointed out flaws with surgical precision. He wasn't cruel, he told himself. He was honest. Honesty was how he'd survived a childhood where mistakes were punished and excellence was the only language spoken. You learned fast or you learned painfully. There was no room for comfort. Only results. Still, something irritated him. Not the food. Not the service. The absence of challenge. When Maya was sent back to the table, she felt every eye in the room settle on her spine. The manager whispered, "Please, just get him through the meal." She nodded. At the table, Alexander barely looked up as she placed the plate before him. "Medium rare," she said evenly. "Rested properly. If it's not what you asked for, I'll correct it." He cut into the steak. Too precisely. His jaw tightened. "This is not medium rare." A hush fell over the restaurant. Maya didn't reach for the plate. Instead, she leaned in just enough to look, not at him but at the meat itself. Pink center. Clean sear. Exactly as ordered. "It is," she said. The word landed softly. Firmly. Alexander looked up sharply. "What did you say?" "I said it is medium rare," she repeated. "But if it's not to your preference, that's different. Preference isn't the same as error." You could hear people holding their breath. Somewhere, a glass trembled against a table. No waitress had ever spoken to him like this. "Are you correcting me?" he asked. "I'm clarifying," Maya replied, heart pounding. You deserve the meal you want. But the kitchen didn't make a mistake. The manager took a step forward. Alexander raised a hand, slow, deliberate. Interesting, he said. And what qualifies you to make that judgment? Maya straightened. I grew up watching my father cook professionally, she said. I trained under chefs who would fire me for less than what you're calling wrong. And because I pay attention. A beat. Then quieter, and because I respect the people who made it. Something flickered across Alexander's face. Not anger. Recognition. Respect had always been transactional in his world. Earned through dominance, not granted freely. To hear it spoken without fear unsettled him. So you're saying everyone else here is incompetent? He asked. No, she said. I'm saying you're not used to being told the truth unless you're paying for it. The words hung between them, dangerous and undeniable. The manager froze. A server gasped softly. Alexander leaned back. For the first time he really looked at her. Not her uniform. Not her position. Her. Do you know who I am? He asked. Yes, Maya said. And that doesn't change what I said. Silence crashed down like a wave. Then, unexpectedly, Alexander laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly. It was startled. You're risking your job, he said. I know, she replied. But I won't let you humiliate people who did nothing wrong. Humiliate. The word struck deeper than she intended. Boardrooms flashed through his mind. Raised voices. A younger version of himself shrinking under impossible expectations. He had sworn never to be on the receiving end again. And yet, here he was. Alexander picked up his fork. Took a bite. Chewed. Slowly. It's acceptable, he said. Relief rippled through the room. Maya exhaled, too soon. But, he added, eyes locked on hers, your tone was inappropriate. Her shoulders squared. So was yours. The shockwave was visible this time. Alexander stood. The chair scraped sharply against marble. Maya braced herself. Termination. Public humiliation. Consequence. Instead, he reached into his jacket and placed his card on the table. See me, he said quietly. You're wasted here. Then he walked out. The restaurant erupted in whispers. Maya stood frozen, pulse roaring. She didn't feel victorious. She felt exposed. And across the city, as Alexander stepped into his waiting car, his reflection stared back at him. Uncertain. For the first time in years. Like in Comment, what would you have done? For the first time in years, Alexander Voss lost control of the narrative. The meeting room on the 46th floor was glass and steel and restraint, but the faces around the table told him everything he needed to know before anyone spoke. His board members watched him the way investors watched a market fluctuation. Alert, curious, quietly concerned. You left the restaurant abruptly, one of them said, tone carefully neutral. In public. Alexander clasped his hands. I was dissatisfied. That's not what people are talking about. A tablet slid across the table. A headline glowed faintly. Billionaire CEO schooled by a waitress. Witnesses describe a tense exchange at Alabaster Row. Alexander didn't touch it. He didn't need to read the article to feel the sting. The problem wasn't scandal, it was loss of dominance. He had built his reputation on authority so absolute it never invited scrutiny. Now strangers speculated. Laughed. Wondered. She embarrassed me, he said. No one immediately agreed. That silence unnerved him more than open opposition. Across the city, Maya sat on the edge of her bed, her phone face down beside her. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the moment replay, the scrape of the chair, the card on the table, the stunned faces. You're wasted here. The words felt less like praise and more like exposure. At work, the tension was worse. The manager pulled her aside before her shift. "You handled that boldly," he said. "But you need to understand something. People like him don't forget. And they don't forgive easily." "I wasn't disrespectful," Maya replied quietly. "That's not how power sees it." She nodded, though her stomach twisted. She replayed her words again and again, searching for arrogance, for error. All she found was truth, and the terrifying realization that truth didn't protect you. 4 days, Alexander avoided Alabaster Row. For days, Maya avoided thinking about him. Neither succeeded. Alexander found himself replaying her voice in the quiet moments between meetings. The calm refusal. The way she hadn't flinched when he challenged her. It wasn't defiance that haunted him, it was clarity. She hadn't wanted to win. She'd wanted him to listen. That unsettled him. Listening had never been a survival skill. Maya, meanwhile, noticed the way coworkers watched her now. Some with admiration. Others with fear. She hadn't meant to become a symbol. She'd only wanted to stop something that felt wrong. The call came 3 nights later. A private corporate event. High-profile guests. Alabaster Row catering exclusively. And Alexander Voss would be present. Maya considered calling in sick. Instead, she tied her apron tighter. The event unfolded with mechanical elegance. Servers gliding, glasses refilled before they emptied. Alexander stood apart from the crowd, answering questions with practiced charm. But his gaze kept drifting. Until it found her. Their eyes met across the room. This time neither looked away. She expected confrontation. He offered none. Later, as guests thinned and music softened, he approached her, not as a conqueror, not as a client, but as a man uncertain of his footing. "You spoke to me as if I were human," he said. Maya stiffened. "You are." Pause. "That's not how most people treat me," he admitted. "That's because most people are afraid," she replied. The truth hovered between them, fragile. "I didn't intend to cause trouble for you," he said. "I didn't intend to confront you," she answered. Silence stretched. Unresolved. Uncomfortable. Then the manager called her away. Alexander watched her leave, frustration curling inward. He wanted to say more, an apology perhaps, but pride tightened its grip. Maya walked back to the kitchen, heart pounding. She wasn't sure what unsettled her more, that he hadn't lashed out, or that part of her had wanted him to say something that mattered. They returned to their separate worlds carrying the same burden. A moment neither could undo. Attention neither could escape. And circumstances already moving to force them closer. Follow and subscribe to continue the story. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary. That was how Alexander framed it, to his board, to the hotel executives, and most of all to himself. A strategic partnership. A 6-week hospitality overhaul at Argent Spire. Efficiency audits. Staff retraining. Brand realignment. Alabaster Row would be the centerpiece. Maya learned about it from the manager's trembling voice. "He's overseeing everything personally," he said. "Consultants, leadership, and a pilot program." He hesitated. "He requested you." The words landed heavy. Requested. Maya stared at the prep table, at her own reflection warped in stainless steel. "For what?" "He said you have perspective." She almost laughed. Instead she nodded. From the first day, proximity rewired the tension between them. Alexander was different in the daylight hours spent inside the restaurant. Not the distant tyrant from headlines, but a man observing, listening, learning systems he once dismissed as beneath him. He rolled up his sleeves, asked questions, took notes, and when Maya spoke he listened. Not always comfortably, not always well, but genuinely. Their conversations were brief at first. Functional. Say, comments about workflow, customer experience, waste. Yet beneath every exchange pulsed what neither named, the memory of that first confrontation. One afternoon, a junior server spilled wine on Alexander's jacket. The room froze. Maya felt her breath catch, ready for impact. Alexander only looked down at the stain, then back at the server. "Accidents happen," he said. "Clean it up." The silence that followed was stunned. Later, Maya found him alone by the service corridor, jacket removed. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes," he replied quietly. "I did." Something loosened between them. Over the weeks, fragments of truth surfaced. He spoke of his father once, briefly. A man who believed fear sharpened excellence. A man whose approval was always conditional. Maya listened without interruption, recognizing the cadence of a childhood shaped by impossibly high standards. She spoke of her own past in pieces. Of education deferred. Of potential paused. Of learning how to shrink so the world wouldn't punish her for standing out. Neither offered absolution. Neither asked for it. Instead they shared space. Silences became less sharp. Eye contact lingered. Trust formed not through grand gestures but through restraint. Yet the imbalance never disappeared. Alexander still had power, enough to change her life with a sentence. Maya never forgot that. The night everything shifted came quietly. A late service. Rain against the windows. Staff gone. Only the piano's mechanical hum remained. Alexander stood at the table where it had all begun. "Sit," he said, not as an order but an invitation. Maya hesitated, then sat. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Not for the food. For the way I move through the world." Her throat tightened. "I don't need apologies," she replied. "I need consistency." He nodded. "I'm trying to learn that." For a moment they were simply two people. No hierarchy, no stage. When his hand brushed hers accidentally, neither pulled away. The connection was fragile, unspoken, and dangerous. Because outside the restaurant, forces were closing in. A board member questioned his judgment. A PR advisor warned him about optics. A future waited that had no space for emotional risk. Maya sensed it, the tightening distance, the return of armor. On the final night of the program, Alexander watched her across the room with something like regret. Some bonds, he knew, were not meant to survive the worlds that created them. And as they stood together in the soft glow of the chandeliers, both felt it. Something beautiful, and something about to break. The breaking point did not arrive loudly. It came disguised as progress. The headlines were flattering this time. Billionaire CEO reinvents hospitality with empathy-driven model. Alexander Voss's quiet transformation wins investor praise. The board was pleased. The press was impressed. Argent Spire's stock ticked upward. And Maya was erased. Her name never appeared. Her voice was distilled into bullet points. Her confrontation, the moment that had ignited everything, was rewritten as a strategic insight. She realized it the morning she was asked to sign an NDA. "This is standard," the legal consultant said gently. "Just formality." Maya scanned the document, her chest tightening. Clauses about silence. About intellectual contribution belonging to the corporation. About voluntary participation. She looked up. "So I don't exist." The consultant hesitated. That was answer enough. She found Alexander in his office that evening. Floor-to-ceiling windows. City lights burning like distant stars. "You're letting them do this," she said. He didn't deny it. "I'm protecting you," he replied. "No," Maya said softly. "You're protecting yourself." The words landed like a blade. He spoke of pressure. Of optics. of timing, of how much good this model could do later. "And what about now?" she asked. "What about truth?" Silence stretched between them, the same silence that had once empowered him. She understood then. When it mattered most, he had chosen safety over courage. Maya slid the unsigned document onto his desk. "I won't be quiet so you can feel comfortable changing," she said. "If this growth costs my voice, it's not growth." She walked away. The fallout was swift. Maya resigned before she could be pushed out. The restaurant returned to routine. Her coworkers hugged her goodbye with tears and whispered thanks. Alexander watched from a distance, unmoving. That night, the restaurant sat empty. He took the same seat, ordered the same meal. The table felt enormous. The steak arrived. Perfect. He pushed the plate away. For the first time, he understood what hunger really was. Days passed. Then weeks. The applause faded. The silence returned, louder now. Alexander replayed everything. Her refusal, her calm, the way she had named his behavior without cruelty. He saw the pattern clearly at last. He changed systems, but not himself, until he did. He called a press conference without warning. No script. No filters. "I owe my transformation to a woman who was brave enough to speak when silence was safer," he said, voice steady. "Her name is Maya." The room stilled. "I diminished her contribution. I hid behind structure and fear. And I was wrong." The admission cost him. The board pushed back. Shares dipped. Advisors panicked. Alexander continued. "This model exists because she reminded me that power without accountability is emptiness." Across the city, Maya watched the broadcast in a small cafe, breath caught. He wasn't asking forgiveness. He was telling the truth. Alexander found her where it had begun. Alabaster Row. No reservation. No entourage. Just him. "I don't expect anything," he said. "I just needed you to know. I finally listened." Maya studied him for a long moment. "Listening is a beginning," she said. "Not a guarantee." "I know." They sat at the same table. The silence returned, but it was different now. Human. When Maya stood to leave, Alexander didn't stop her. He had learned that lesson. At the door she paused. "Some things can't be undone," she said. "But some things can be done better." She left. Alexander stayed. Not because he was waiting, but because he was finally willing to sit with what he had become, and what he still needed to be. The piano played softly. The lights dimmed. And the table where power once ruled now held something rarer. Respect. Comment your feelings and subscribe for more unforgettable stories.